which would be a benefit of a construction manager project delivery for the owner? So first of all, just remember that the term project delivery refers to kind of any different way that a project gets kind of comes into being. So the typical one would be a design bid build. So that's where the owner, the client, hires an architect, they negotiate back and forth about schematic design and into design development, and then eventually the architect finishes out the contract documents, prepares a bid set, sends it out to a number of bidders, and then those bidders all bring information back. One bidder is chosen, they then become the GC, and it goes on to build the project. That's a sort of tried and true, long-standing way to do it, but it also takes a long time and has certain disadvantages. There are obviously certain advantages to it as well, but it has certain disadvantages. Another project delivery method might be design build, where instead of having that whole separated process, you actually, as the owner, hire one entity. It might be two different companies, might be one company, but it acts in terms of the relationship to the owner as one entity, and it has both the designers and the builders all put together in that one entity. So clearly has a whole very different sort of delivery of the project. It has different contracts, it has different relationships, it has all those aspects are all quite different. So there's a number of these different ways that you can deliver a project. The construction manager concept is another one. So the construction manager idea for project delivery is that the owner, instead of going through the process with the architect and then bidding out to a number of contractors and then getting a GC straight from that, at the same time that they're hiring the architect, they're also hiring a construction manager. So if you kind of think of the construction manager as an employee of the owner, it's not actually technically an employee usually. Usually there's some sort of subcontract or something. But if you kind of think of it as an employee, the construction manager, an employee of the owner, there's working for the owner. And then as the architect is doing the designs, the construction manager is helping the owner kind of manage, will this meet the costs they need? Are there issues of construction that would be useful to help the architects out to kind of speed things along? So it's a way of getting that kind of information that the contractor could bring early in, and it allows the owner to sort of take a little more responsibility for the project as a whole. So the question is, which would be a benefit of what would be a benefit of the construction manager project delivery method for the owner? So let's look at the four possible answers. We have CM, a construction manager, responsible for means and methods. We have early pricing information. We have lowers the owner's liability. We have D, can speed up the construction schedule by overlapping trades. So the first thing I can say is it's not D. It may well speed up the construction schedule, but it's not by overlapping the trades. That would be fast track. That's a very different, completely different project delivery system. Now let's look at C, lowers the owner's liability. Well, if you think about it, the owner is now being more involved in the design decisions. The construction manager is now taking on the responsibility not of being a separate GC, but when the building period comes, they're going to be hiring subs, but in the name of the owner. So they are acting kind of like a GC by the time you get to the construction phase, but they are technically an employee of, or not technically, kind of an employee of the owner. So they're acting on behalf of the owner and hiring all these subs. Well, in sort of out in the world, obviously, if you're the one hiring the subs, you're taking on the liability. So in fact, C is exactly the opposite. If you're doing a construction manager project delivery, you are actually increasing the owner's liability. So you might wonder, well, why would they want to do this? Why would an owner want to have a construction manager if they're increasing their liability? And the answer to that is, well, you know, the main reason is that if you are increasing the liability, it also means you're taking the profit of that liability as well. If if you think about what a GC gets paid for, they get paid to kind of do all the work, but they're also being paid to sort of take the chance. You know, they say, all right, we'll be able to do this project for $1.2 million, and they come in at $1.1 million. Well, they just made an extra 100 grand, you know, because they said they'll do it for $1.2 million, but actually they were able to make it work at a lower number, so they get to save that extra money and hold that extra money. There's a lot of different ways, different contracts will share some of that and things like that, but in general, they get to hold that money. But equally, if it comes in at $1.3 million, they just lost 100 grand. So they're taking the chance that the project, that they've figured out how to make the project go. Well, so if the owner is hiring a construction manager, they are effectively saying, all right, we're going to take that responsibility and liability and have it in-house, meaning that if they save the money, they've saved that 100 grand for the owner. But it also means if it goes to 1.3, well, they've just lost the million and they've taken the liability of that for the owner. So C is actually exactly backwards. It's not going to lower, it's going to increase the liability for the owner. And then we have A and B left. The construction manager is responsible for the means and methods, and B, early pricing methods. Excuse me. Both of those are sort of true, both of those are true to an extent, but the best answer to this question is going to be B. So that seems like kind of a low-level answer, but in fact, it's actually really an important issue. If you think about how an architect tries to do their best to sort of do cost estimates and sort of guesses early on in the phases and kind of makes their best judgment and talks to various people to kind of keep the project in line with the original cost estimates. But architects are not sort of famous for their ability to do that. And GCs and construction managers are. That's their job, is to be able to put prices to a drawing set. And so having a CM involved, one of the big issues for that is that the CM is able, at the first set of drawings that come from the architect, be able to review and start to see where cost implications might be a problem, or provide helpful information about what the architects could do to bring the price lower. So one of the key things that you get out of a construction manager is early pricing information through the project. So B is definitely the sort of typical answer that NCARB would expect in that kind of situation.